Alright, let's build. So first step, let's decide whether you want to put your lipo on the bottom or the top plate. For this build, I'm going to put my lipo on the top plate because I tend to use this for freestyle more. The shark fin TPU along with the battery strap will protect the lipo really well in a crash. This frame also allows you to mount the lipo under the plate as well, race style. The downside with that obviously is if you land too hard, you might bust your lipo. But the cool thing about putting it on the bottom is now the bottom is like nice and flat and can take up to 3 straps. If you want to, I wouldn't put this on there, but similar size maybe, something lighter, you can strap in something really long on the bottom just for long range type of missions. And if you mount it on the bottom, the lipo is closer to the motor, so you got just like a better center of gravity, so you might have a better feel. I only include 1 strap, but you can actually put up to 3 straps. With the strap on here, it almost kind of gets in the way of a mini stack. If you decide to put, straps in the front and back, you can mount your mini stack upside down on the top plate with these holes. So this is actually 20 by 20 and 25 by 25 holes. So the first step is to take your base light bar and pop it in there. Take your upper light bar and push it through this slot. Once you push the top one in, it should stick out kind of like that with a little triangle. Or you could just skip it completely because I only include 1 LED light, and for me, I will be putting the LED light on the base plate. So in this build, I'm going to use a 45 amp all-in-one by Flywoo. So this is one of the best all-in-ones I've tested. It's got an MPU 6000, it's got 32-bit, plenty of UARTs, lots of plug-and-play ports. Even the pads are nice and big. It's simply amazing. Obviously install the gummies on it, and it's a 25 by 25 like most all-in-ones. So when I install it, I'll just want a little bit of height. I'm going to use my M2 by 18 screws and M2 by 5 nylon spacers just to raise it off the plate a little bit, just in case I want to run some wires under there. So these are the gummies for the AIO. Do you see how one side's shorter than the other? The short side faces up, the long side faces down. They take a bit of finesse to squish them in, but just keep working at it. Alright, now we temporarily pop it on, just so it's easier to solder. I'm just going to see what kind of electronics I have. I have the DJI O3 Pro. That's plug and play, so no soldering for that. I also have a Flywoo Nano GPS without compass. This board actually does have a plug and play port for the GPS, so I'll probably remove this wire here and replace it with the Flywoo one that they include. I also have a used receiver here. I might have to replace these wires as well with a plug-and-play one. There's reason why I chose 45 amp AIO is because I'm planning to run 6S. If you plan to run 4S only, you might be able to get away with 35 amp AIO. This Flywoo AIO comes with this really cool looking XT30 connector, but you see how it's using like this 18 AWG wire. It's a little thin and lightweight for 6S. So I went and picked up just on Amazon, just something a little more robust, something a little thicker. This is 16 AWG. So you can see there will be less chance of a bottleneck in power, especially it's well matched. The lipo I plan to use is a 850 Tattoo 150C, and standard it also comes with 16 AWG wires. So I'd like to get my soldering iron nice and hot and use lead. Got this on Amazon. This type of flux on a pen. Just put it on all the pads so the solder like flows really well onto the copper. Doesn't need much because these are really small. Kind of nice bead. Just rub it around. Try not to breathe this stuff in. Definitely bad for you. I'm sure it causes memory loss. My metal can here. And just clean the tip a bit. He's nice and clean now. Remember, don't keep the iron on too long because you'll start melting stuff. Tin some of these plugs for the GPS. Just tin all the wires for prep. This is the LED bundle wire that's included in the kit. So now working on some of these smaller parts, I like to take some painter's tape, make it double-sided, and just put it on the work surface. And this is how I kind of just stick things to the table, so it's just easier to work with so they don't slide around while you're soldering them. So for this LED that's included in the kit, you want to solder into D in. Your off colored wire goes to D in, which is the middle. The ground wire goes into negative. I'm just going to take off some of these old wires on my receiver and also my GPS by just simply tapping them. So before I solder on the plugs for my Nano RX receiver and my Nano GPS here onto the supplied plugs from Flywoo, I have to check the diagrams on these again because I never remember it by heart. I just usually go on Google Images and I just search these parts and I write diagram, and that's how you find out. Okay, so now you prepped all this stuff. You can put these two away. Just don't forget, when you're happy with this, you can shrink wrap it or just wrap some electrical tape over so it doesn't short against the carbon. So I'm going to put away the GPS and receiver because they're plugs. It's going to be easy to plug and play later. So next up, we're going to be putting in this LED light into the base first. And now we're going to put on the TPU feet. So you can actually see the feet are kind of different. The front feet are like sharp. The rear feet, yeah, the rear feet is like more rounded. Let's put the rears on first. Hook them on like that. Slip it on. You can totally skip out the feet too if you want, just to save some weight. So these are the motors I used on my prototype. They're from Axis Flying. Unfortunately, I don't think they make this model anymore. This is the 2204.5. 2750 kV. So I found these to be really powerful using 6S, and they were kind of warm to the touch. Worked really well with Betaflight defaults, so a tune wasn't really required for this build. But yeah, they don't make these anymore, so I don't know, you're gonna have to find something similar. Some customers are already opting for 2005, you know, like similar, just a little smaller, but 3000 kV. But these are really heavy, eh? Like they're about 21 grams each. So if you use these, don't expect a sub 250 build, but hey, it's gonna still be 100 grams lighter than the next 5-inch. It's still gonna rip pretty hard. And I found that using 4S, at least for these motors, using the 18650 Flywoo 3000 mAh Lion pack, I got at least 20 minutes of flight time. It wasn't super powerful, but it could still hit 85 kilometers an hour. But using 6S, I hit 162 kilometers an hour with these motors, and they remained warm, and using these really good R-line batteries. These motors are a 12 by 12 configuration, which fits this frame, but I also designed this frame so you could fit 9 by 9 motors as well. Check out this 1404 motor from GEP-RC, and you can see how much smaller it is compared to what I've been using. So if you run 4S only, you could definitely get away with just using this, but if you use 6S, you know, you definitely want at least 1804 or, you know, 2000 series and up motor bells, and don't do too high of a kV if you're going to run 6S. Maybe something under 3000 kV would be safe, because right when I lift the stick, it's pretty much hovering already, so you just got to be really careful. This is a very lightweight, high-performance quad. Screw in the TPU screws first, and then after it'll help you align your motor much easier. So for the TPU portions, it uses an M2 by 7 screw, which is included by the kit. Just 2-finger tight, don't do it anymore. And this final hole with no TPU used a provided M2 by 6 screw. So next up, if your motors are brand new, they would have super long wires, so we want to cut them nice and short. Mine are already trimmed to size, and just take each wire and measure it. So let's start with the most outer wire here. I would bring it right up. Bring it right up to the ESC, right to that point. I would take my wire snipper and just snip it right there. For the rear motors, run them through the middle, under the VTX. You know, you gotta measure it going all the way to the sides here. And there's enough slack where I could kind of zip tie these onto the post. You can hang the VTX under the top plate. It doesn't look like it, but this is actually a 20 by 20, and then you see the hole there is 25 by 25. So you see under here, there's a nice little like X brace. And I got lots of space under there. I'm going to use a zip tie and just zip tie the RX to that brace. Have my T antenna out the front. Now time to put the XT30 on big fat pads. So we need to determine the length. So what I like to do is I'll take the standoff and the M2x6 screws and I'll just loosely install them on the top plate for now. The shorter you make it, the lighter your quad will be, because this wire is pretty heavy. I'll probably put the lipo something like this, and it will reach down to almost, probably be like something like that, and do one of these. And if I ever want to switch to the bottom, yes, I can put it through here and it will reach the bottom as well. So once I determine a good length, I'm just going to take my Sharpie here and just make a rough mark of where I'm going to cut it. Now we're going to have to add the cap. So just remember the shorter end here is always negative and the longer end is positive. So I'm just going to make them nice and short as possible. I know you crazy builders are going to find some creative ways to hide it. I'm just going to just cut them really short. Probably just add them right to the pads here, positive, negative, and add a little zip tie and hold it down. Finally, all the soldering is done. So now we can attach the O4 Pro air unit to this top plate or any other VTX you desire. I'm going to do 20 by 20. So that way, in case you need to move your strap farther back, then you have just like a little bit more room. First, I'm going to take my M2x6 screws and put it through these areas. Loosely thread in a nut on the tip. I'm hearing a lot of that's what she said, but anyways. Okay, so it's a little tricky, so take your time. You don't want to tighten one side all the way because that would just that would put stress on your threads on your air unit. In the kit I included two antenna mount types. So we have a single antenna mount and I also included the dual antenna mount. Yeah, so this is the right side antenna mount and that's the left side. So they actually have like a slit that you can just clip them onto the antenna. You see the bottom here is capped off, so you could push it all the way to the base. It won't go any further. If this is too loose for your liking, you can always slip a zip tie in between here, or you can make the post thicker just using some electric tape. You see how it looks like that? You can just clip it over. Now put the M2x22 standoff in the antenna mount and take your M2x6 screw and screw it into the top plate. The correct positioning is like this. Now we're going to install these TPU60A camera dampeners. They're nice and squishy, so they dampen vibration going into your O4 or O3 camera. So you can notice the design here. The outer part is for the O4 Pro and the inside is for the O3 or any other universal cameras that can just, fit any of these holes. So this is the right side cage. Simply just push it into and just snaps right in just like that. If you plan to use the middle square for any other camera, then use the provided washers so the screw doesn't go right through the TPU60A because it's quite soft. But for the O4 air unit, it doesn't need washers. The screws are touching carbon fiber. You see the camera cage protects the lens. And right now you can see I have a iFlight ND filter on here, so it fits perfectly. I know a lot of people have trouble with these, but the iFlight ones are pretty good. You can see you can just take a finger and just push it off and that's it. Use your M2 nylon nuts and secure the stack. Just turn it until your fingers start slipping and that's enough. You don't have to crank these. So I'm going to clean up some of these motor wires and just get them down onto the arms. So I like using this fabric tape here. You don't need a lot, just like 1.5 inches, and then you just wrap it around. We're just going to use some rubbing alcohol, put it on a toothbrush, and just make sure we take off any, loose tin that might be on the board because that would cause problems if you're trying to start it. So the kit includes a shark fin TPU with an integrated nano GPS slot and an action camera mount and titanium screw and nut. So to install the nano GPS, simply just spread the flaps, slide in the nano GPS, ensure it's flush, and try not to break this little cap because it's very fragile. Make sure those two flaps are out and holding the nano GPS flush. Pre-install M2x5 screw and secure it with a nut under the top plate. I'm going to plug my GPS in. Match these squares to the square holes and ensure your RX is kind of like coming out like that. You're not pinching any wires while doing this. So I'll secure these like loose wires later. You don't want these wires to flap around on top of your gyro. It can create noise in random axes and screw up your tune. Okay, I just snapped that in. One thing about this frame is if you have your camera more than 30 to 45 degrees for the O4 Pro, the standoff will be in the way of tightening the screw. So just make sure when you loosen or tighten the camera to tilt, you just have to remove the standoffs on each side, just like this. So there's going to be M2x10 screws, which are good to go through the 4mm base plate. Put them into the standoff first. Finger tight is fine. I'm going to tighten the camera screws really well now. Just finger tight on each side and just keep shifting from side to side. So I'm going to do this side and I'm going to go back to the other side. You'll feel the resistance from the TPU60A squishing in and then go back to the other side. Because if you do it too much on one side, the camera might, start turning or something like that, or twisting. So we have 3 more standoff in the kit, but let's put in the 2 on the sides here now. On the top side, you'll be putting through a M2x6 screw, and on the bottom side, you'll be putting in your M2x10 screws. All right, moment of truth. We gotta check if she's gonna blow up or not. So here's where I stress that you definitely need a smoke stopper, because who knows what happened during the build. We could have like bridged connections, positive negative mixed, or something's touching the carbon. I got this from Gap RC. I'm still using it today, and it's got this green status light on here, and I'm assuming if it's any other color, you gotta disconnect right away. If it's green, that means you're totally fine. So I'm just going to loosely plug it in and wait for the ESC chimes, and if I see any other status light, I'm definitely laying it out. All right, let's go. She's fine, no smoke. The first thing I want to do is look at the firmware version. So we do have a newer one now. So since this is a brand new board, I'm just going to auto detect 4.5.2 full chip erase. Yes, I'm just going to go for it. So I'm just going to flash the new one. And you can see this accelerometer is enabled, but it's not calibrated. So what you want to do is bring the quad to the floor, make sure it's not rocking around, and then hit calibrate accelerometer. Okay, that's good. Okay, so you see when I tilt the quad forward, it's rolling. You see that? So if you don't fix that, then your quad is going to flip as you arm. So you're going to have to go into configuration and mess with this. So I'm going to try default, save and reboot. You see now when I tilt it forward, it's going backwards. That's not good. So I'm going to do a 180. All right, 180, save and reboot. This is very trial and error for me. I'm kind of stupid. So okay, now let's see what happens. So now when I tilt it forward, oh, you see the back of the quad is tilting up, and then look, when I put it on its back legs, it's going on its back legs now. So that's what we want. The quad will fly normally now. I always like to do motor direction is reversed, and because we're using AM32, bi-directional D-shot is on, so I'm just going to agree. I'm not going to get into motor direction, so you're going to have to figure that out. So right now you see dynamic idle is 0, which means the computer will figure it out for you, but I always think it doesn't figure it out fast enough, especially when you're doing like bursts and like throttle pumps. What I like to do is figure out the base value. Then you have better hang time, and you got your full spectrum of your throttle. So I'm going to plug in the lipo just so the motors can spin up. I'm gonna set it to a point when they're barely spinning. So they're like kind of stuttering. 400 RPM, they're kind of rough. At 1000, they're spinning pretty good. So that means I'm just gonna add another 1000 RPM. So for this particular motor, input it as 20 and save. 20 means I'm going to idle at 2000 RPM. So I think that's a nice low number. Can you imagine if you put like 50 or something? Then it's going to be spinning quite fast, and with success it might like want to hit the roof. So now we're going to put on Tessa Grip, which is a sticky lipo pad. Because it's sticky, it might attract dirt and stuff, and if it gets really dirty, all you have to do is like wet a toothbrush and just brush off the dirt and it's good as new. It'll last for a long time. I have a lot of ideas that you can get some inspiration. So I removed the plastic because it's just so much easier to cut. So yeah, take your sharpest scissor that you have and just start cutting. Remove the paper backing and just try to center it as well as you can. I'm just kind of loosely putting it on just in case you need to reposition. So now it's time to put on the proto strap. Plug it in there and just loop it through. I zip tied the XT30 to just one of the nylon M2 nuts that are going into the VTX unit. So I think it'll just be less chance of a prop strike. And if you decide to have your XT30 face another way, there is some nice cutouts here where, you know, the XT30 can just, or XT60 can kind of just stick out like that, and then you can zip tie it to one of these holes as long as they're not being in use. These are the only props I tested. They're Gemfan 4032-3. They're the highest pitch prop that I could find in 4-inch, and note they only come with a nut mounting style. If you have lighter motors, you probably have T-mounted. I've included titanium screws for those so you can have more weight reduction. My quad's configuration is props out, which is like this, where the blunt sides are facing inward. So the props will be spinning like this.